Hey there, it's Brendan with RE/MAX Kelowna, and I'm talking to Una Gabie with Touchstone Law. So I want to talk to you real quick about buying a foreclosure property. You know, the market's hot right now. We don't see a lot of them right now, but certainly, you know, from time to time they do come up. And just wanted to discuss as a buyer some of the risks that go along with purchasing a foreclosure property.
So it's for sure one thing, it's a little bit harder to do your due diligence on the property. That's because one of the things you guys frequently get as part of your transaction will be a property disclosure statement that discloses information about the property to the best of the seller's knowledge. A bank generally, when they're controlling the foreclosure sale process, isn't going to complete that document. Right. Often the bank's contracts will say the property is sold as is, where is, which is obviously very different than the nature of the transaction when you have a willing buyer and seller that are entering into the transaction in the normal course. As well, there's just some inherent risks in our side of the process as a result of a foreclosure, and that's simply because a bank will not give you the same agreements on closing that we typically would see from an individual seller. So things like dealing with the potential residency of the seller, GST on the property, whether or not it applies. We typically rely on the seller to give us the information to confirm those items because it's pretty hard to otherwise. Yeah. And banks aren't generally overly willing to step out and make representations on those types of things. As well, if you have an unhappy seller, which in some cases you will when you have a foreclosure, being kicked out of their house, you may run the risk of them just not leaving. Yep. So,
heard of that happening, or destroying the place, or leaving all kinds of mess behind. So what, you know, if buyer takes possession of a property, seller's still there, or the place is trash, or it's full of junk, like, is there any kind of legal recourse, or it's too bad, so sad?
For the most part, it's probably going to depend on what's in the contract, and they're all a little bit different, but frequently you'll see when it's a bank selling, there's a set of standard terms that they attach to that contract, and for the most part that says, we're selling you the property as is. We're not confirming that there's going to be any appliances there when you move in. We're not confirming it's going to be clean. We're telling you take it as you bought it. If it's a possession issue and the bank has agreed to provide vacant possession under the contract, which is usually the case, and the existing owner or tenant has been properly served with notice to vacate, there is a court process you can go through to get the possession piece dealt with, but frequently the other risks are really those that the buyer takes on.
Part of the process. So, and I think, just making sure that you're getting, you know, a good deal on this property, because you know that there's a certain amount of baggage that could come along with this, and some potential surprises down the road.
For sure, and to a certain degree, you probably know this better than I do, but the value of a foreclosure property I don't think is really all that much less than it otherwise would be. Part of that's because it's up to the courts to approve the sale price, and they don't want to be unfair to the actual owner of the property who's being foreclosed on. So they don't want to see the property going for less than fair market value anyway. So they've got a pretty solid process they make people go through before they'll approve a sale.
It's an adventure.
It is.